The great conflict of the 21st century has already begun. It will not be fought with nuclear missiles or invading armies. It is a new kind of Cold War, waged in silence, in sterile laboratories and corporate boardrooms. The weapon at the heart of this war is smaller than a grain of sand, yet it holds the power to determine the future of global dominance. The semiconductor, the microchip. And just a few months ago, the United States unleashed its most powerful economic weapon. A strategic move designed not just to compete with China, but to cripple its rise permanently. This isn't just a trade dispute. It is a deliberate act of economic warfare. It is the execution of a secret plan, a historical blueprint that America has used once before to bankrupt and collapse its greatest rival. This is the story of the chip war. It is the story of how America plans to defeat China, not with soldiers, but by following the exact same playbook that brought the Soviet Union to its knees. To understand this new Cold War, you must first understand the weapon. The semiconductor is the new oil. It is the foundational technology of the modern world. Your phone, your car, your computer, the internet, artificial intelligence, the stock market, all of it runs on these tiny, microscopic slivers of silicon. But more importantly, all modern military hardware runs on them. F-35 fighter jets, hypersonic missiles, drone swarms, and advanced surveillance systems are nothing more than useless metal without the most advanced microchips. For decades, the United States has held an unassailable position in this critical industry. While most chips are physically manufactured in places like Taiwan and South Korea, the choke points of the industry, the real power, lie in American hands. The most advanced chip designs come from American companies like NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel. The complex software needed to design these chips comes from American firms like Cadence and Synopsys. And most crucially of all, the impossibly complex machines that are required to manufacture advanced chips are built by a handful of companies, like America's Lam Research and Applied Materials, and a single, irreplaceable company in the Netherlands called ASML, company over which the United States holds immense technological and political influence. Control these choke points, and you control the future of technology. And for years, China has been the world's biggest buyer, spending more on importing semiconductors than it does on importing oil. They were a customer. America was the supplier. Then, China made its ambition clear. Its Made in China 2025 plan was a declaration that it would no longer be a customer. It would become a competitor, pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into building its own domestic semiconductor industry to rival America's. The United States saw this not as competition, but as an existential threat. A technologically independent China is a China that can challenge America's military and economic supremacy. And so, America decided to go to war. Not a hot war, but a cold war, an economic war. And to do it, they dusted off a 40-year-old blueprint, the playbook that destroyed the Soviet Union. To understand what is about to happen to China, we must go back to the original Cold War. From the 1950s to the 1980s, the Soviet Union was a military behemoth. It had thousands of nuclear weapons, a massive conventional army, and influence across the globe. But it was an economic dwarf. Its centralized communist system was inefficient, brittle, and technologically backward. The Reagan administration in the 1980s made a calculated decision. A direct military conflict with the Soviets would be suicidal. The path to victory was not to outfight them, but to outspend them, to bankrupt them. The strategy was a masterclass in economic warfare, fought on 4 fronts. First was a new arms race. The U.S. launched the Strategic Defense Initiative, or Star Wars, a hugely expensive and largely theoretical missile defense system. The Soviets, terrified of falling behind, were forced to pour billions of their own precious resources into trying to match it. It was a technological race they could not afford to run. Second was economic strangulation. The U.S. and its allies maintained the Coordinating Committee for Multilateral Export Controls, or COCOM. This was a list of advanced technologies that were forbidden from being sold to the Soviet Union. It was a technological blockade designed to keep the Soviet economy and military permanently a generation behind. Third were proxy wars. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan became their Vietnam. The U.S., through the CIA, armed the Mujahideen, leading the Soviet Union dry in a costly, demoralizing decade-long war. And fourth, the final nail in the coffin, was commodity price manipulation. In the mid-1980s, the United States convinced Saudi Arabia to flood the market with oil. The price of oil, the Soviet Union's main source of hard currency, crashed. The effect was catastrophic. The Soviet economy, already strained by the arms race and the war in Afghanistan, lost its primary source of income. By 1989, the system was broken. The Berlin Wall fell. By 1991, the Soviet Union had ceased to exist. It had been bankrupted. The economic war had been a stunning success. Now, fast forward to today. Look at the strategy the United States is deploying against China. It is the exact same blueprint, upgraded for the 21st century. Let's start with the new arms race. The arms race today is not for missiles, but for artificial intelligence. AI is the technology that will define the future of both economic and military power. And it runs on the most advanced semiconductors in the world. On October 7, 2022, the Biden administration enacted a sweeping set of export controls that are designed to stop China's advancement in AI cold. These rules don't just stop American companies from selling advanced AI chips to China. They stop any company in the world from selling China advanced chips if that company uses American software or American equipment in their manufacturing process, which is everyone. This is the modern version of the Star Wars program. The U.S. is deliberately cutting China off from the core technology of the future, forcing them to try and build their entire semiconductor industry from scratch. This is a monumental task that will cost China hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of dollars money they will have to divert from other parts of their economy. It is a forced, ruinous spending campaign. Second, let's look at economic strangulation. The October 7th rules are the new COCOM, the technological blockade. The most devastating part of the sanctions isn't just about the chips themselves. It's about the machines that make the chips. The U.S. has used its immense diplomatic power to force its allies, particularly the Netherlands and Japan, to join the blockade. ASML, the Dutch company that has a global monopoly on the extreme ultraviolet lithography machines required to make the most advanced chips, is now forbidden from selling these machines to China. This is the choke point. Without these machines, China is technologically frozen in time, unable to advance past a certain node of chip manufacturing, while the rest of the world moves forward. It is a calculated plan to ensure that China's technology remains permanently a generation behind. Third, look at the proxy wars and alliances. The most dangerous flashpoint on Earth right now is Taiwan. We are told this is a battle for democracy and sovereignty. But it is, at its core, an economic battle for control of the world's most important company, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. TSMC is the foundry that makes the most advanced chips for everyone, for Apple, for NVIDIA, and for the U.S. military. Its dominance is absolute. America's strategy around Taiwan's strengthening alliances with the Philippines, Japan, and South Korea, and increasing its military presence is a strategic containment. It forces China to pour immense resources into its own military, preparing for a potential conflict that would be economically devastating for them and for the world. It is a 21st century version of bleeding the Soviets in Afghanistan. And fourth, the trade war. The tariffs and trade disputes started under the Trump administration have not gone away. They are a constant drain on the Chinese economy. While not as dramatic as collapsing the price of oil, the goal is the same: disrupt and damage your rival's primary source of income. The blueprint is in motion. A tech arms race, economic strangulation, and geopolitical pressure. It is the Cold War playbook, deployed with digital precision. But this is where the story gets more dangerous. Because China is not the Soviet Union, the Soviet economy was an isolated island. It was barely connected to the rest of the world. Bankrupting it was painful, but contained. The Chinese economy is at the very heart of globalization. It is the world's factory. The supply chains of every major corporation on Earth run through it. A full decoupling, an attempt to bankrupt China in the same way the US bankrupted the USSR, is not a contained demolition. It is an act of mutual assured destruction. By launching this chip war, the United States has crossed the Rubicon. It has signaled that the era of peaceful globalization is over. The world is fracturing into two distinct, competing technological and economic spheres, one led by America and one by China. This is the splinter net, a future where there are two separate internets, two separate sets of technologies, two separate supply chains. The consequences of this will be immense. It will mean higher prices for consumers, as companies are forced to rebuild their supply chains. It will mean less innovation, as collaboration is replaced by competition. And most dangerously, it risks turning this new Cold War into a hot one. By attempting to halt China's technological rise, the US is challenging what the Chinese Communist Party sees as its very destiny. A superpower that feels it is being pushed into a corner is a dangerous superpower. The risk of miscalculation, particularly over Taiwan, is terrifyingly high. The sanctions are an act of war, fought with economic tools. But economic wars have a habit of becoming real ones. So what happens now? The United States has made its gamble. It has bet that it can use the same blueprint that broke the Soviet Union to break China, without breaking the world in the process. It is a bet that China, facing technological stagnation and economic pressure, will be forced to submit to American dominance. But China is betting on its own resilience. It is pouring unprecedented resources into its domestic chip industry, hoping to achieve a technological breakthrough that will make American sanctions irrelevant. It is strengthening its alliances with Russia and other BRICS nations, building a parallel financial system to challenge the dollar. The two greatest powers of the 21st century are now locked in a direct, confrontational struggle for the future. The chip war is the central battlefield of this struggle. The outcome will determine whether the American empire maintains its dominance, or whether we are entering a new, multipolar world. The historical blueprint is clear. Economic warfare is a powerful and effective tool for collapsing an empire, but it is a weapon that, once unleashed, is almost impossible to control. The United States has fired the first shot. The world now waits to see how China will fire back. If you are ready to continue decoding the financial myths that shape our world, subscribe to Economythics and click the notification bell.